Hello again. Welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony.
I'm their friend and guest, Alan Singer.
Alan Singer is a teacher of teachers. He's a historian, blogger, one of the more, there's a phrase that's going around that people don't like, which will circle back to Mike Pompeo, woke individuals on the planet. And so we're always happy to have him guesting with us. And this is brought to you by the good graces of EVT Educational Productions, Manhattan Neighborhood Network, Zoom, and MNN will air it next Monday. We're taping the Wednesday before our Monday air. And I'm not even sure what that date is, but what is today? Today is like the 27th of January.
That'll be the first. That'll be the 1st of February.
That's going to be a February date. How about
Yes.
that? This is our first show of February. And we invited Alan Singer, Dr. Singer, back because what flew under my radar, flew under Bob's radar, and almost flew under Dr. Singer's radar was the fact that the 1776 Commission, the former 1776 Federal Commission, on Martin Luther King's birthday celebration, put out something called the 1776 Report. And rather than me beat the drum about it, I'm going to let Dr. Singer tell us about that commission and that report. Go ahead, Alan.
Look, no one should be surprised that any version of history that bears Donald Trump's stamp of approval, borderline ridiculous. The commission that he established did not have one United States historian on board.
Didn't have any historians on board.
And it was, and he set it up. You know, during his first impeachment hearing, he tweeted that the Democrats don't want our greatest of all presidents impeached. So clearly, Donald Trump does not have much of a sense of history. My initial reaction was to ignore the report, especially after President Biden dissolved the commission in one of his first official acts. But unfortunately, the report lives on in Republican-controlled state legislatures and is being used by right-wing proselytizers trying to rehabilitate the Trump image. I mean, in Arkansas, the state legislature is already considering two bills threatening to defund schools that use the 1619 curriculum or project. I mean, there were just a couple of things that are really weird in this statement that was released. You know, the Trump Commission asserts, and this is a quote, American people have ever pursued freedom and justice. Now, that might be a surprise to enslaved Africans, immigrants attacked by nativists, workers beaten or shot when they went on strike to organize unions, African Americans terrorized by the KKK, and activists silenced by periodic Red Scares. You know, the report acknowledges that there were some missteps because people are imperfect, but the missteps are always met with clear principles.
Okay, the missteps they're referring to are slavery.
Yeah, that was the clear principle.
Okay.
I mean, there were just so many things that were outrageous. You know, for example, they said, one of the things they said, what's great, one of the things that's unique about the United States is it has a definite birth date, July 4th. But the reality was, one, the Declaration was actually approved on July 2nd. It wasn't signed till August, and the country wasn't established until March 4th, 1789. So it doesn't have, I mean, even on the details, it's a fairy tale. But the one thing that really is scary, they denounce progressivism as aligned with socialism and communism as an attack on American values. And so what does that mean? Somehow limits on the power of monopolies, job programs, Social Security, women getting the right to vote, school integration, all of these progressive programs are dismissed as communist.
What you're saying is the American labor movement, okay,
Yes.
an example that took millions of Americans out of poverty, that gave people the stepping stone into a middle class with those good paying jobs in the automobile factories and in the steel mill, despite the fact that there were some seriously horrendous conditions in these capitalistic factories and working places. The union movement that gave these union workers rights, which is part of a quote progressive movement in the United States of America, that is bad American history. That's what this commission's propaganda is saying, correct?
It goes against American values.
I was going to bring up exactly the same thing, Eric. The insult to labor unions and the progressive nature of labor reforms. I mean, things that guaranteed that when you go to work, you would come home alive. You know, that somehow is un-American, according to this quote unquote study. And now, Alan's a historian. My degree is in history from Columbia. There were no historians involved in this 1776 report. The American Historical Association, the largest association of, you know who I'm talking about, Alan,
Yeah.
the largest organization of historians in this country, were insulted by the ignorance of this report. And I noticed by looking on their website, numerous other history organizations signed on to the statement the AHA made about how worthless and a piece of propaganda this was.
They were incensed. That organization was incensed. They weren't just insulted, they were incensed.
Yes.
The director of the AHA, he described the report as a skillfully weaves together myths, distortions, deliberate silences, and both blankets and blatant and subtle misreading of evidence to create a narrative and an argument that few respectable professional historians, even across a wide interpretive spectrum, would consider plausible, never mind convincing.
Now, just imagine, Alan, if you and I were in a room and we as historians, you being a much better one, were asked to, edit this thing. Outside of the front cover, I don't think I would have left anything in.
No, it's a fairy tale propaganda. Look, they decide they want to show that Martin Luther King was part of this traditional American veneration of the Declaration of Independence. But then what they say is after 1964, the civil rights movement abandoned the principles and became radicalized. But what I guess they miss is that Martin Luther King was alive for another 4 years. He led the movement to challenge the three evils of militarism, poverty, and racism that they're denouncing as antithetical to American values. I mean, I don't even think they read what they wrote. Trump certainly didn't.
So I'm quite happy. Go ahead, Eric.
Trump does not read. So basically, he just gave them the green light to rehash, because from what I've read, a lot of those were rehashes of articles, these crackpots, whether they have academic degrees or not, based on this report, I can safely call them crackpots, had put out in various ultra-conservative right-wing publications trying to dismember and savage the 1619 report. And so, and other books and articles that have been written about the fact that slavery and the actual fact of slavery was the underpinnings to the founding, the support, and the development of this supposed greatest country on earth. And the fact that they don't want to acknowledge that, and they were so incensed by the 1619 project and that well-documented piece of work, is why Trump commissioned this commission, put them in place, and asked them to come up with propaganda. Now, you've said that you were expecting propaganda, Alan, before the report came out. What I liked about Joe Biden was the fact that his very first day
Yeah.
in office. He disbanded that commission and took down that report from the official website where they had put it. So I got to say one thing about Joe Biden. When he came out of the gate, he did not come out of the gate half-stepping, to use a vernacular that we often use in the Black community. He did not come out of the gate half-stepping. He came out with all guns blazing, as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, some people related it to a car that's, you know, it's one thing to step into a car that's working, you know, you can relax and get, you know, figure out what to do with it later. But when you inherit a car that's basically busted and has all sorts of things hanging out, a repair job is what you got to do on day one. And a repair job was getting rid of the 1776 report, which compared to the 1619 report, which was an amazing piece of scholarship and research, taking so much effort and detail compared to this report is the polar opposite in terms of research and work.
No name, no author's name is on it. There's a committee, but they do not say who wrote it. I don't know if anybody wants to take responsibility for it.
Well, the guy who was chairing this commission is pushback about the fact that there's a bunch of rehashed articles. It says, oh yes, we had no problems quoting our own previous work that we had published in other publications. So that was his way of acknowledging that, yeah, we recycled a bunch of stuff. It was our own stuff that we were recycling.
There were no citations at all in the document.
But what you said, Alan, scared me. And you said that Arkansas was threatening to defund school districts that used this piece of scholarship, the 1619 report,
yes,
as part of the curriculum, which is just an astounding insult to American education.
No, they have passed laws. Alan can recycle that. Repeat that. They passed 2 laws.
They passed that. Okay, that's
advocating this propaganda stuff or similar educational craziness be taught in their schools, or anything that resembles curricula that acknowledges the accuracy of what's in the 1619 report, forbidden from being taught in their schools. Correct me. Is that the laws they passed? That's the summation of those laws.
Actually defunding, which, you know, people who, at least in Arkansas, they were talking about defunding, taking money back from schools that violated this.
And that's not the only state. There are other states.
I'm sure there are
other red states that are pushing. And these people have decided, even though they've been disbanded, that they're going to launch a campaign to get a lot of these red states, state legislatures to sign on to their propaganda and try to get it pushed into their school systems in those states. So we've got a big fight ahead of us, which is why I wanted us to talk about this issue, because it flew under the radar because of the assault on the Capitol and that insurrection. And so with that as a possible segue, why don't we talk about the current fallout from the insurrection and how it ties into some of the other stories that are breaking now that will be breaking next week when we air. The Senate trial for the second impeachment of Donald J. Trump is now February 8th. And whereas before there were a number of Republicans who actually pointed their fingers at this past president for insurrection and inciting people to do this attack, now only 5 Republicans signed on for trying him for the actions that he did, as opposed to a few others that were pointing their fingers at him. So, Alan, what have you seen historically? The Senate that's backing up now, the Republicans are saying there's no precedent for trying an official who's already out of office, et cetera, et cetera. I know for a fact, historically, that's not accurate. What can you shed light on that, Alan?
Well, there was one case where a cabinet member was going to go on trial for impeachment, and so that cabinet member resigned, so it was not pursued. This is the thing. The Constitution.
Alan, there's another case. I'm not sure it was a cabinet member or a judge. it may have been similar, where the guy who resigned under Lincoln's administration, I believe they may not have prosecuted him. I think they impeached him anyway. They may not have tried him, but there was a judge, federal judge, who actually was out of office that they actually did try as part of the impeachment process. And so the Democrats are saying this is as constitutional as it comes. Just because this man is no longer in office, he needs to be tried. Whether we convict him or not, he needs to be tried.
Right. The Constitution doesn't take a position on what's happened is Republicans who do not want to be associated with what Trump did, but who also don't want to be subject to primary attack from right wing. But they've taken the position that the Constitution doesn't empower us to put on trial someone who's no longer in office. No. But the answer is the Constitution doesn't discuss it. It's not that it forbids them, it doesn't take a position, since it doesn't take a position, you have a right to do it. Since he's already out of office, you can't remove him. The key is whether you can prevent him from ever running for office again. But also, I think the key is whether the nation is able to assign blame for what happened. Because if you can't assign blame for what happened, these things are just going to keep replicating. Now, Eric Foner, who's a very, probably the preeminent American historian in the United States.
He's one amazing historian. I read him as I went through Columbia, but go ahead.
He was one of our experts in Every Voice and Sing, if you guys remember that. He was one of our Reconstruction experts in Every Voice and Sing. Yeah. Well,
on Reconstruction, his position, and I think it's a very interesting one, he argues that the 14th Amendment, which authorized Congress to ban former Confederates from ever holding office, that could be used by a simple majority vote to ban Trump from ever holding office again. So if the Republicans are able to block the impeachment, there is an option, and I read Foner's argument, and I believe he's correct, that the House and Senate with the narrow majorities can ban Trump from ever taking office under the 14th Amendment.
Without the aid of a previous impeachment.
Right, without the aid. That's how he reads it. And I have to be honest, he's number one, as you say.
I've got a question on that 14th Amendment pertaining to insurrection, based on a lot of the stuff that I've seen that's percolated after the insurrection failure. And a number of people said that the clause in the 14th Amendment, I don't know whether it's the Section 3, Section 8 of the 14th Amendment, allows for any person in Congress or about to enter Congress who aided any insurrections or insurrectionist attempt to be actually banned from office. And so my question is, if we read that 14th Amendment and look at it very carefully, are the people who voted not to certify the valid electoral college votes that states had already approved, and it was just a pro forma thing to actually certify it and make Joe Biden the official president? The people who voted against certifying those votes, is that clause applicable to them? Is there not a way of interpreting that clause in the 14th Amendment to make these people pay for trying to overturn a valid election with that kind of vote?
Well, I have the clause. It's Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. And it says, no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector or president, vice president, or any office, civil or military in the United States or under any state, who have previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or an officer in the United States or a member of any state legislature, support the Constitution, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same. So you cannot hold office if you have, after taking an oath of office, supported insurrection. That's what it says.
Okay.
And Congress can make any law to enforce that. So with a simple majority vote, all they have to do is say Trump fomented insurrection, he's no longer eligible to run for president or dog catcher.
How about folks like Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley, who were vocally saying these elections are not legal, who are not whatever, who were giving aid and comfort with this big lie to these people who were incentivized to attack the Capitol? Does that make them possibly liable? Is that a logical interpretation?
I read it the same way. Look, there were a couple of people in Congress who actually gave them tours the day before.
Yeah, I am with you on that. I want the full force of the law, the Constitution, the amendments to be brought down on these people. Am I reading too much, or is this a logical, not a stretch to try to do this?
I read it the way you read it. Doesn't mean that it'll carry.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I definitely read it the same way you read. That's what it says.
Okay.
You know, I always joke, I read pretty good. That's what it says.
No, I mean, based on what you read from the, from the code itself, it's a term, insurrection, that it's a subjective term. I mean, it's open to judgment, and the Senate and the House, the Congress, that's the right place to judge whether there was such insurrection in these actions, in this enabling, in the spreading of the big lies. And there are plenty of big lies that are still, like you said, Eric, still percolating. So yeah, this is dangerous. Especially these new crackpots like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Or do I have that wrong?
Yeah. It's, I think, last name's Green, first name Marjorie. So
yes, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yes,
yeah.
A freshman congresswoman from what is it, Georgia? Yes, Northwest Georgia, just before you hit Chattanooga, the 14th district, and it's the crackpot things that are coming out of her mouth. She's been anti-Semite, she's been racist, she's been QAnon. This is what we have coming into Congress to help support the big lie, but that's where we are.
She's the one who said, like that Facebook post about a bullet for Nancy Pelosi, a bullet to the head for Nancy Pelosi. She actually liked that posting. She said equally things about executing Clinton and Obama, and in full support of that, talking about we need the right time and the right grace, and we have to put the right thing in place. Otherwise, some liberal judge will let them off. And Kevin McCarthy, who's supposed to be the key House person to ride herd on craziness in the Republican caucus, all his comments are, we'll have to have a talk with her about her language. Yeah, we have to have a talk with her. Yeah.
There is precedent for refusing to seat a representative. It was done, I believe it was during World War I, where Victor Berger, who was a socialist and opposed the war, they would not seat him, and they declared the seat vacant. So there is precedent for not allowing her to serve.
There are a number of people I think that they should be targeting. This Boebert, or whatever her name, B-O-E-R-B-E-R-T, out of Colorado, the one who was giving directions to people during the insurrection assault. She's saying, well, they've moved the speaker from this location, they've moved her to another location. That is, as far as I'm concerned, aiding and abetting, providing information as this thing is unfolding to the people who are ransacking the Capitol. They might want to claim it was otherwise. What the hell is she doing telling people where the speaker's position is at the height of an assault on the Capitol? If they don't go after her and put the full force of the law on her criminally and ban her from serving, then the Democrats don't need to be trying to run this country. If they let crap like that go unchallenged, I'm not for turning the other cheek or looking the other way when they try to physically. The fact that a Confederate flag was walking around in the goddamn Capitol, I haven't been this angry since the fucking, excuse my, that's how pissed I am. Since they flew those planes into the World Trade Tower, I have not been this angry. This is outrageous.
And we have about
people get away with this they need to be drawn and quartered themselves.
And we have about 2.5 minutes left, but I agree with you, Eric. I just want to mention something that the former cybersecurity guy, Krebs, said on TV the other day. He was fired by President Trump after alleging that the elections was fair and secure. Krebs said on TV, quote, "You don't get a mulligan on an insurrection. I mean, you don't get a freebie. You deal with it now. You don't say, oh, this is okay. Well, maybe next time we'll go after these people. No, do it now."
I'm with Krebs.
Wait, I forgot. Andy Borowitz had a very funny proposal for the Republicans. He said they should make it three strikes and you're out. So only on the third insurrection should you be done.
Yeah, right. I can't even laugh at that joke. I'm so pissed. I just can't. I can't.
When we were meeting before, we were talking about the editor from the New York Times who was discontinued because of a tweet. Again, that's scary because at this juncture, we have to really fight against these things. And I don't know, maybe Bob could explain it because it really seemed, I couldn't understand why she was replaced.
I mean, we're at a point where you have to, there's no more time for this position and let's give you the other position, no matter how far crackpot it might be. We're in a moment when we have to, of explanatory journalism. And if you can get the essence of a moment or the essence of the true essence based on research of what somebody said, that's what we need. We don't need he said, she said, okay, now we're balanced. No, you need the scholarship behind it. And we have about a minute left.
Yeah, this is an issue. Bob and I have been deep in this journalistic, what's right, what's fair, how do you report the news properly, and this whole bit about you have to be neutral down the road, et cetera, et cetera. We've had shows where we discuss what's neutrality, what's objectivity, what's honest, integral journalism, and there are things that needs to be discussed. We're going to return to talk about that story because it takes some in-depth discussion. So I'm going to say we're going to put a pin in that one for now. This has been Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony. Catch up to us on Twitter and YouTube at Media Watch EVT.
And I'm their friend and visitor, Alan Singer, and thank you guys for having me.
Alan, thank you for being with us again. And folks, join us the next time. Stay safe, watch out, wash your hands. COVID is still out there wreaking havoc.